49ers had a big win last night against the Los Angeles Chargers at Levi Stadium. We'll get into all that, as well as some updates from Kyle Shanahan's press conference earlier tonight on the Jack Hammer Show. Everyone, hope you're doing well tonight. It is Monday night. The 49ers coming off a big win yesterday. Always like to come in on Monday, kind of review the game from the day before, give my thoughts. Normally would be doing this with Rob. He's down with some weather today, or some not feeling well. So I'm going to be doing this myself. Going to go through the way I'm going to do it tonight, a little bit different than normal Mondays. I'm just going to do it like I would do after a practice during training camp. So I'm just going to go through my observations from the game. If there's some questions that you guys want to throw at me, we'll go through that. Should probably take about a half hour. No more than that. We'll get through this and hopefully get you guys some good information. Yesterday with the 49ers coming out ahead 22-16, a lot of interesting discussion today around the 49ers Twitter sphere. We'll get into some of that as well. Really quick, want to hit on the injury updates from the game. 49ers came out of the game very clean. The only injury that occurred last night was to Danny Gray. That injury came in pregame warmups. He rolled his ankle, so he was injured, wasn't able to go. The 49ers are hoping that he'll be back this week and be able to go against the Cardinals in Mexico City on Monday night, a week from tonight. Another injury topic that's on the minds of a lot of folks is Eric Armstead. Kyle Shanahan was asked today if Eric Armstead will be available on Monday night against the Cardinals, or if there will be, if he's going to have a chance to play. Shanahan did not rule that out. He said he does have a chance. So we'll see what happens as the 49ers, when they return to practice this week, if Armstead's on the field. We haven't seen any of Eric Armstead for the last quite a few weeks here. During this time that he's been out with an injury, he hasn't been doing any kind of rehab in front of the media, hasn't been around us at all. Obviously, we're only there for about the first 20, 30 minutes of practice anyway. But during that portion, we haven't even seen him. So we'll see what happens when they return to practice. It's a foot ankle injury that he's dealing with, foot on one side, ankle on the other. And so we'll find out this week as the days go on. Probably going to be Thursday or Friday before we have any information on Eric Armstead and his availability to play in Mexico City. I think it's a long shot, that just because of the travel that's involved, the extremely high altitude of playing in Mexico City. I think that's something that would be taken into concern as well. So I'd be very surprised to see Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers, run Eric Armstead out this week on Monday night against the Cardinals. So that's just my 2 cents on that piece. Beyond that, though, I go back and I look at this game last night, and I think I might have it was an interesting game. Let's put it that way. It was one in which the 49ers had opportunities to blow them out. It's just blow it open, I should say. Maybe not a blowout, but they had a chance to blow it open a couple of different times. They struggled in the red zone for various reasons. We'll get into that tonight as well. Got in 5 red zone trips, 2 touchdowns, 3 field goals. That's why they get the 23 points. You look at this game overall, and coming into it, I told everybody on my prediction 27-17 49ers. It was really close. Almost the Chargers were right next to that number at 16. 49ers had a chance if they don't get a drop pass in the end zone by Brandon Ayuk. They get the 26, would have had that margin of victory of 10 points that I thought it was going to be. One of the things that I'm finding interesting is the reaction to 49ers fans. You guys can tell me in the comment section if I'm wrong, but the reaction to 49ers fans seems to be a little bit of disappointment over the victory last night. And the reason I said is because, again, it was only 22 points by the 49ers. They only won by 6. It was a come from behind win. And it just seems like there's a overall sense that the 49ers should have blown that game wide open. And for whatever reason, it wasn't a good performance from the 49ers. And I go back and I look at this game, and for me, Sunday night's game against the Chargers last night was one of those games that shows the character of a team. The 49ers were the better team. They struggled, and they've struggled quite a bit this season at times. But this was the first time this season where we've seen the 49ers struggle in a game and fight through it and come back and win close. 22-16, the 6-point margin of victory, the closest for the 49ers this season in a win. All the other close games this year have been losses, out in Chicago, Denver, Atlanta even was a closer game than the spread really shows. The only one there they really got blown out was the Chiefs. But, the close games hadn't gone the 49ers direction. Their closest victory before last night was 15 points. And that was against the Rams back in week 4. So the 49ers have not won very many close games because they haven't been in very many that they've been on the positive side. And, so to see the team struggle the way they did last night, fight through those mistakes, you look at the first quarter of the game, you had in the first half, let's just go through the first half. You have the defense blowing a couple of coverages in that first possession for the Chargers, leading to a touchdown. So there's points for the Chargers there. 49ers' second possession opens up with a completion to Brandon Ayuk that he fumbles when he gets hit by Derwin James. Understand it's kind of a tough play there because he's spinning around and getting hit as he's spinning. Ball hits, helmet hits the ball right on it, knocks it out. Tough play there for Ayuk, but that leads directly to points for the Chargers for 3. So that gets you to 10. And then you have a special teams for the 49ers, which has been an issue all season. They pitch in with their punt team allows a punt to get tipped. So a 17-yard punt gives the Chargers field position inside the 49ers side of the field. And a couple of plays later, you have Dre Greenlaw with the personal foul on a scramble by Justin Herbert that puts them down in field goal position. The 49ers defense is able to hold on that, force a field goal, but that's another 3 points. So you look at this game, and you have 16 points from the Chargers, and 6 of those are based off of a turnover and a punt that was tipped. And then you have a bad series by your defense, and that's why you find yourself in a hole. Yet the 49ers are able to dig out of it. Took a little bit longer than you would have liked to have seen, but I thought overall it was a pretty solid game. And I see lots of different things over in the comment section. Definitely want to get into this stuff. And let's start with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good starting point for tonight. I felt like Jimmy Garoppolo, I feel like he's played about as high a level in the last 2 games that we've seen him play. Against the Chargers last night, he was 19 of 28 for 240 yards. Was sacked only once. That sack coming off on a naked bootleg to the right side. So nobody's blocking Khalil Mack on that play. They're hoping that he's going to follow the run inside. That's why it's called the naked. You get the sack there. But other than that, it was pretty good. You look at Garoppolo, he was 7.9 on his net yards per pass. That's the number I always like to look at because that includes all the pass attempts and sacks and yardage lost by sacks. Garoppolo was at 7.9 net yards per pass last night. That's nearly 2 yards higher than the Chargers have allowed this season. You could tell the Chargers came into this game really loaded up to stop the run game. But at the same time, Garoppolo had a pretty solid performance. What really made it impressive to me was what he's done over the last 2 weeks. I shouldn't say last 2 weeks, but the last 2 games on third down in particular, and his ability to limit the mistakes. You look back to the Chargers game just this last week, he hit on 8 of 10 third down pass attempts for 108 yards. You put that together with what he did against the Rams 2 weeks ago down in Los Angeles, and over the last 2 games combined, Garoppolo was 11 of 15 for 133 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, and he's run the ball 4 times for 6 yards and a touchdown. All that happening on third down. That's when you need your quarterback to step up, and Jimmy Garoppolo has done a very good job of that over the last 2 games for the 49ers. Garoppolo's missed some throws, but the thing is they haven't been costly. That's the big thing. When we talk about costly mistakes by Garoppolo with those mistakes, those are the turnovers, and he hasn't done that. You look at Jimmy Garoppolo. There was a stat a few weeks ago about how little he throws the ball away. That's exactly what we saw Garoppolo do a few times last night. One of the real notable occurrences for myself came when the 49ers were down in the Chargers red zone. It was their opening possession of the game. They'd driven down. They were 1st and 10 at the 9-yard line for the Chargers. Garoppolo play fakes, drops back, looks to throw. Nobody's open to the left, looks to the right, looks to the middle. Nothing's open. Throws the ball out of the back of the end zone to a fan that's sitting in the front row of the seats behind the end zone. And perfect pass, really, because that's what you want. That's the situation where if you go back to last year, for example, in Tennessee, the interception in the red zone in Tennessee, if he had done that, the 49ers score points right there, and that might probably changes the whole complexion of that game. So really like the fact that he threw the ball away, took it, tossed it out of the back of the end zone. We saw that again on one throw to over I think it was to Deebo Samuel. There was one where basically he just grounded it. He had nobody in front, no options, and he threw the ball into the ground. And there was another one also on a screen play to the left side. Was just blown up, and there was nobody there, and he just chucked the ball into the ground, living to play another down, and that's been key. And then if you're going to do that, that's where those third down conversions come in. So solid performance all around from Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's been playing, like I said, I think these last couple of weeks are as high of a level as he's played during his time at the 49ers. And you look at this, and if Garoppolo's able to limit the mistakes the way that we've seen him do these last couple of weeks, this 49ers team has all of the pieces to be successful in the second half of the year. You look at their schedule they have in front of them. You look at what they did last night. Even if they just keep matching what they did last night, I think they win a lot more games than they lose in the second half, and they probably make a run deep into the playoffs in January. So a really solid performance by Jimmy Garoppolo to get that thing started. Ian Sharp says the red zone offense seemed to stall regarding the play calls. And I think that's an interesting one. That was a question that was brought to Kyle Shanahan today. He pointed to the execution on some of that. Again, let's just go through them. I know he did that on his conference call. He went through the red zone plays. I don't have a problem with doing that myself. The first trip down, 1st and 9, you see the one that's where Garoppolo throws the ball at the back of the end zone on 1st down. 2nd down, you get a 7-yard run up the middle to Deebo Samuel, or by Deebo Samuel. Interesting little change of pace there for the 49ers, getting Deebo Samuel in this game more in the middle instead of the outside. And then you have McCaffrey get stuffed for no gain. That was one in which Shanahan felt they should have been able to score a touchdown there. Then you get into the second half, or the second quarter, excuse me. And that's the one where really that's the one where you have a 3rd and 12, 49ers backed up at their own 23. Garoppolo completes a 21-yard ball over the middle to George Kittle for a big 1st down. The next play, you have some pressure get in his face. He escapes the pocket, rolls to his right, throws a strike to Ray McLeod down the right sideline for a gain of 33 over the shoulder of linebacker Troy Reeder. A couple plays later, the 49ers are down at the 1-yard line, and Garoppolo with a sneak into the end zone to make it a 13-10 game. Pretty solid one there. They open up the second half, drive it down into the red zone, 1st and goal from the 7. Mitchell for no gain. Then you have the play. We'll get into this tomorrow on the film breakdown. Garoppolo throws a pass out to the right to Elijah Mitchell. That's one in which I think that was a choice for Garoppolo to throw it out to the right flat to Mitchell, or he has another route, which I'd have to go back and look at the film to totally understand. But I know from what Kyle Shanahan said today in the press conference or his conference call, that was not where he wanted the ball to go. He thought it should have gone somewhere else. So you get a completion there, but you lose a yard, so you're back to 3rd and 8 at your 8-yard line. You run an inside route to Brandon Ayuk. Really nice route. He's open. Garoppolo puts it on him, a little bit behind him, but we're talking probably about, maybe 6 inches. Easily a catchable ball for Brandon Ayuk, and he drops it. Kyle Shanahan labeled that as a drop as well, so I have no problem with that. So back-to-back drives should have been touchdowns. You have a lack of execution on Brandon Ayuk's part there, though. And at that point in the game, Ayuk was struggling a little bit, and you saw him really come on after that in the second in this later on in the second half. Really, a couple really nice completions from Jimmy Garoppolo on third down. And then you go into the fourth quarter. You open up that with a trip to the red zone. Christian McCaffrey scoring from 2 yards out. That was one that was set up by a completion to Ayuk from Garoppolo, 24 yards. You get the blitz, really nice blitz pickup by right guard Daniel Brunskill. And also Jimmy Garoppolo does a really good job of getting that ball out quick, putting it on Ayuk, who makes a fantastic catch and nice run after the catch as well for a gain of 24. You score the touchdown, and then the last one in the red zone there, you have the 49ers not scoring, 3rd and 1 from the 1. Kyle Shanahan said on the conference call today he felt like that was probably a spot where they should have thrown it, but because of the time on the game, he wanted to force the Chargers to take their timeouts. And so instead of doing that, they went out and they ran the ball. It was supposed to go off left guard, will count play. That's the one that we've seen all over Twitter today with Mike McGlinchey missing the block on the right defensive end defensive tackle, who makes the stop of Elijah Mitchell short of the goal line. Would have been a touchdown, though, if Elijah Mitchell just kept his feet and didn't slip. So that's the red zone stuff. So going through all the red zone plays for you. So hopefully that clears that up. I mentioned Brandon Ayuk already. I thought Brandon Ayuk last night was exactly indicative. His performance was indicative of what that whole night was for the 49ers. He struggled in the first half, came out in the beginning of the first half, dropped that ball in the end zone. Before the 49ers went out for their next possession, he took some extra throws from Brock Purdy. Purdy basically firing at him as hard as he could. He went out, made a really nice catch from Garoppolo on the right sideline, made that really nice catch over the middle. Just a few really nice catches there. And you really need to tip your hat to Brandon Ayuk for the performance that he put in, because he had a couple of bad plays in this game, but then he goes out and when it was time to make a play late in the game and they needed something, he made the big one, and he ends up being the 49ers leading receiver last night. He was targeted 7 times. He was targeted the most of any player. Caught all but one of them. The only one that he didn't catch was the drop in the end zone. 6 catches, 84 yards along a 24. That was the big third down play there. So really nice night for Brandon Ayuk overall. He's showing once again that he is the 49ers leading wide receiver. Deebo Samuel, it was an interesting night for Deebo Samuel. You look at Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. I'm not sure if the 49ers have really figured out what they're going to do with those two. It seemed to me in watching the game that they were searching, that everything that they did with McCaffrey and Samuel on the field together was trying to trick the defense instead of just lining up and running what they normally do. And it impacted both of their play. McCaffrey ends the night with 18 total touches between 14 of 38 rushing, so not a big rushing night for him. He did score the touchdown, but it was more of on the passing side for him. 4 catches, 39 yards, a big 21-yard completion to open up the second half. Deebo Samuel, on the other hand, 27 yards on the ground, 4 carries, targeted 6 times, but he only came up with 2 catches. Those 2 catches for 24 yards, both coming on 3rd and long. One of them, his longest, was 16 yards, and that came on 3rd and 20. Ends up 4 yards short, and the 49ers punt that away. The next one was also on 3rd and long. It was an 8-yard completion in the left flat. So just not really not a game for Deebo Samuel where he was really impactful in the passing game. Had a couple of nice runs, though. You look at the 49ers running game overall. Elijah Mitchell, 18 carries, 89 yards. Big night for him. 18 carries, and 65 yards for McCaffrey and Samuel combined. So Mitchell definitely carrying the load last night. And I think, going back really quick before I get into Mitchell, that's I think the thing with McCaffrey and Samuel, it's going to take a little bit of time for Shanahan to really see how defenses react to those two being on the field. And once he gets a better feel for how defenses are responding to their movements, I think that'll allow him to then respond. And once you got to get, that's one of the things that he talks about a lot is That's why they build in certain plays in the beginning of the game, because they want to see how defenses are going to react. And I think that's what we're seeing here a little bit is Shanahan thinks defenses are going to react one way, but they're not right now. And so as he gets more comfortable with where the defenses are going, I think we'll see the duo of Samuel and McCaffrey step up. Mitchell, I thought last night was solid. Let's talk about him a little bit. Making his return, first action since the first half of week 1 out in Chicago. And I thought that Mitchell was extremely impressive. He looked explosive there in week 1. Last night, you saw that explosion, big run after big run. Not really overly. I mean, his long run last night was 12 yards, so it's not like we're seeing massive chunk yards, but we're seeing it was a number of chunk gains in the 12 to 10, 8, 7 yard range, which are chunk plays to me in the run game. If you're ripping off 7 or 8 yards in the NFL, that's a pretty good hit, and that's right around where we saw Mitchell for most of the night. So it'll be interesting to see how this trio goes. I still think the nice piece about that is you have McCaffrey, who is a dynamic player that can do certain things. You have Elijah Mitchell, who is a little bit different player. He's not quite so dynamic in the passing game, but he's a very strong runner in between the tackles. I think you look at that game last night and you watch what Mitchell did, and it looked very similar to Chicago. Zone read, turn, read that defensive end, let him run right between the tackles. It's going to be interesting to see if they can find a nice balance between those two as they go into Arizona next week and then down the road. And Ian does shout out Juwan Jennings, and that is another one that I want to touch base on. Juwan Jennings had a solid night last night. Kyle Shanahan was asked today about Odell Beckham. Did they have interest in Odell Beckham? And I could have wrote his answer before he even responded. And he said, of course, we're going to look into it. We'll have interest there. That's what 49ers, that's what they always say. They're always going to be taking a look at everybody. They're going to consider everything. They said that a number of times, so that response didn't surprise me at all. But you look at what Jennings did last night. Some big time catches for Jennings. He's a third down guy. Doesn't seem to make many receptions other than that. But he had a number of those third down completions from Garoppolo were to Juwan Jennings last night. 11 yards on completions to Juwan Jennings last night for Jimmy Garoppolo. Jennings finishing with 4 catches, 40 yards, along with 12. But those were big receptions for the 49ers to help move the sticks. I still feel like Odell Beckham is a more explosive option for the 49ers in that spot. And he might be able to really help the passing game in that perspective. And where a guy like Odell Beckham would fit in is he's going to take some of the snaps from Juwan Jennings when the 49ers go into 11 personnel. He's not going to take all of them, but he'd step into some of that third wide receiver role, 2, 3, whatever you want to call it. We'll see what direction that goes. But Juwan Jennings was really solid last night. And I think the 49ers offensive line was solid as well. I know there's been a lot of talk about Mike McGlinchey and his performance last night. I look at that game last night when I was watching it in the press box. There wasn't at any point in that game where I felt like the 49ers were losing because of Mike McGlinchey. I know that he struggled with Khalil Mack. That was to be expected when you looked at the 49ers schedule and we knew that they were going to be playing against the Chargers. But when you looked at that schedule and saw LA Chargers on it with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, you expected that there was going to be some pass rush issues that the 49ers were going to have to deal with. Well, they got a little bit of break because Joey Bosa wasn't playing, but you still had Khalil Mack, and he's still a pretty darn good pass rusher. And McGlinchey got matched with Mack several times last night. And as you'd expect, McGlinchey got pushed back a few times. But at the end of the day, there was one quarterback hit that was allowed by Mike McGlinchey. One time, the guy that he was blocking hit the quarterback. The rest of the night, he kept his quarterback clean. Even if he was getting pushed back and causing the quarterback to have to move around, he's doing his job by keeping the quarterback from getting hit and keeping the quarterback from getting sacked. I know we would all like to see the defensive tackles just be a stonewall, not allow guys around them. Really kind of block more along the lines like what Aaron Banks does at left guard, where you hit him and he just doesn't move. That's not who Mike McGlinchey is. It's never been who he is. So I've been seeing a lot of stuff with McGlinchey, and this is this is just me talking, but we know that Mike McGlinchey is who he is. This is how 49ers Twitter works. And whether it's Mike McGlinchey or Jimmy Garoppolo, you get your players that you aren't happy with, and you just rip them, and you continue to rip them. And it doesn't really matter. And as long as they make one mistake in the game, you got ammunition to rip them. And eventually those players move on, and then you go on to the next guy, and you just start ripping him. Because I looked at Mike McGlinchey's game yesterday when I watched it, and like I said, we know who he is. We know he's going to give up some pressure. We know he's going to get pushed around a little bit. He's not Trent Williams when it comes to pass protection, but he played a good game. He's the best right tackle the 49ers have on their team. It's not going to get any better. I don't know why we continue to have the same conversation week after week about Mike McGlinchey. Why we continue to have the same conversation week after week about Jimmy Garoppolo. We don't really see this all that much on the defensive side, I guess, other than Javon Kinlaw. But at some point, I think we need to be able to move forward on this conversation and say, here's where he's weak at. Here's the positive. In this game, this was a game which he had a few bad plays, but for the most part, he was solid. 49ers don't win last night if he's not doing a good job on Khalil Mack, one of the best guys out there, like I said. So I think that McGlinchey played pretty well last night. Again, if I was going to give him a grade, I'd probably be a C plus, but an average to above average grade for your right tackle. You know, you look at the numbers. I'm not a big PFF grades guy, but according to their grades, he's the number 21 graded tackle in the NFL. Puts him in the top quarter of tackles in the league at number 21. He's better than everybody else on the 49ers, like I said. And there's been, looking at the numbers for him from last season, for example, there were some people that asked me today, what about Tom Compton? How come the 49ers were so much better with Tom Compton than they were with Tom Compton was so much better than Mike McGlinchey last year? Well, the easy answer to that was Tom Compton wasn't better than Mike McGlinchey last year, especially in pass protection. He was better on the run. I'll give you that. He was a better run blocker than Mike McGlinchey. That's partly why the 49ers were running the ball 40-plus times with him in the game. When it came to pass protection, he was worse. Last season, Compton gave up a pressure on 7% of the pass plays that he was in on. McGlinchey was at 4.72 this season. And last year when McGlinchey was at 4.72, there were a number of folks who were talking about how well he was playing. To put those numbers into perspective for McGlinchey, right now he's at about 5.1. He's allowed 15 pressures, I believe it is, on the season. In order to have matched and be at the same number of pressure percentage allowed as he was last year when people were praising him, the difference in pressures allowed, 1. So 1 pressure, and when you look at the percentage of pressures allowed, McGlinchey is 1 worse than he was last year when there was a number of people talking about how good he was. And right now we have people saying that the 49ers should do all kinds of things. They should replace him. They should put up. Who are you going to put in there? Just think about that for a second, because there's nobody on the 49ers right now that can play right tackle better than Mike McGlinchey. All right, moving on to the 49ers, to the defense. Talanoa Hufanga, mentioned this on Twitter last night. 4th interception of the season. Fantastic season here for Talanoa Hufanga, showing that this 49ers scheme, the lack of turnovers by the 49ers safeties over the last 5.5 years, the first 5 years of the Kyle Shanahan regime, isn't a scheme issue. It is a talent issue at safety. Talanoa Hufanga with 7 interceptions. That's as many as the person he replaced has had in his entire career. I know some folks were telling me that that's a cheap shot, but really I don't think so. I think it shows that Hufanga is a playmaker. Some people pointed out the better tackling ability of the person replacing Hufanga. Hufanga has a lower missed tackle percentage as well. Is he missing tackles? Yes. The player that it's about 1% lower than the player that he replaced from last season. So Talanoa Hufanga playing very solid. I think that plays a lot of role into why Jimmy Ward is playing nickel instead of playing safety is that the 49ers feel like the two safeties they have on the back end, Tayshaun Gibson and Talon Hufanga, give them playmakers on the back end of their secondary. Although Gibson only has the one interception, he almost had an interception against the Bears. His tip led to Hufanga's interception at the beginning of the Chiefs game. I just think those two guys play really well. Jimmy Ward struggled, continues to struggle at times in the nickel, especially when he's in their nickel playing and lined up in man coverage against these wide receivers. He's going to struggle. He's much better in zone where he can drop into a zone and then come up and make a tackle. It's going to be interesting to see how the 49ers progress through this, but I think that's going to be their lineup throughout the rest of the year. They're not going to get another corner in there that's going to be better than what they have. Their defense that we saw last night, I think, is what it's going to be in the secondary in the back half the rest of the year. So that's going to be an interesting to watch. But I think this 49ers defense, even with it, we saw how talented they were last season. I think they're a little bit better this year. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch how they play these next 8 games. Got to hit on really quick. A few other guys before we wrap this up. Nick Bosa. Another solid game out of Nick Bosa. Last night, recorded a big sack. He also had 4 hits on the quarterback to lead the 49ers. So a solid game out of Nick Bosa. 4 tackles. Right behind him, though, another name that maybe you wouldn't have thought of coming into this, but very much like how Elijah Mitchell hit the ground running here after a long off. Jordan Willis, picked him up a couple of years ago in a late trade with the New York Jets. Jordan Willis comes in last night, finishes with a sack. He has 4 tackles as well, a couple of quarterback hits. Really solid game from him. And last but not least, Charles Omenihu. He got the start last night at defensive end opposite of Nick Bosa, but really spent a lot of time sliding between inside. They would bring in either Jordan Willis or Drake Jackson early in the game to take that edge rusher opposite of Bosa. Jackson he didn't flash last night, but you got more of that out of Willis, which is why he started taking more of those reps. And Omenihu, even though he started on the outside, when Jackson would come in or Willis, he would slide down into that defensive tackle position. So he's kind of taking Eric Armstead's spot right now, or Javon Kinlaw, their spot on the inside of that pass rush. And Omenihu came up with a sack last night, and he had 3 hits on the quarterback. So Bosa, Willis, Omenihu, all those combined for a total of 9 quarterback hits last night, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss for Bosa, 1 for Jordan Willis. Just a huge game out of those 3 down linemen for the 49ers. And then you get to the linebacker level, and Fred Warner played a tremendous game last night. Austin Eckler coming into this thing was a guy that the 49ers were going to be worried about. Really, he's their leading receiver, somebody that you know is going to get a lot of action. And they shut him down. Eckler had a 12-yard completion catch on the opening possession. After that, they pretty much shut him down. The big catch by Eckler was a blown coverage by Dre Greenlaw, who should have been in man coverage on him. There was the way they motioned, he didn't slide down far enough, and he and the cornerback ended up covering the same guy. Yeah, so it was a coverage bust there. The 49ers had several coverage busts in a row that helped Justin Herbert go 5 for 5 on that opening drive. Wide open guys all over the field. And Fred Warner came out there, and he had 3 passes defense last night. So really solid effort by him. Dre Greenlaw as well, all over the field. 7 tackles before he was ejected right before the half. But Fred Warner, like I said, 3 passes defense, 7 tackles. Solid night out of the linebacker there as well. I didn't really see a whole lot. You had Travis Ward with a really nice pass breakup on a throw to the right sideline. Did a really nice job. Came up. It was a curl route. Got his hand around, knocked the ball away, and then Drake Jackson. I didn't mention him earlier. I should have mentioned him as well. He had a pass breakup, pass defensed. A throw to the left side, got up, knocked it down. So really solid game all around for the 49ers. I know that they didn't score the points that we want to see, but I felt like you looked at this, and I look at this game as one of those games in which you don't play to your potential, but you still find a way to win. And those are the games at the end of the year that determined or the difference between winning your division, and being an also-ran. And so for the 49ers, big win coming out of the bye. Only the third time in 6 tries that Kyle Shanahan's been able to do that. So really solid effort for the 49ers last night. And give them big kudos because it's a win. Wins are wins in the NFL. You don't worry about the score at the end of the year. It's just about getting it. This isn't college football. You don't get more votes because of your style of play. So that's a big one there. Jack, this is on Mike McGlinchey. Micah comes in. Jack, it's because McGlinchey has 300 to 400 snaps a game. His run blocking is worse too. He has 2 to 3 complete whiffs on run blocking as well. It's all very noticeable in the game tape. Yeah. Okay. If you'd like, tune in tomorrow night when we go through the game tape, or tomorrow when I do that. You can do this with every 49ers offensive lineman. You can find, if you want to choose a player and you just watch him, you're going to find 2 to 3 plays a game where that offensive lineman misses on a run play. And the play doesn't get what it should because usually it's an offensive lineman. I showed you guys that last week with Spencer Burford on one play in particular, on a run to the left side. You can do that with all these guys. 3 to 4 horrendous pass snaps. Okay. Like I said already, Mike McGlinchey going to get beat at times. His footwork is not the fastest, not the quickest. And so he's going to struggle with speed rushers. And the fact that he went up against Khalil Mack last night did not allow a sack, even though he got pushed back a few times. I don't get why we're talking about him. I get that you got that clip from a content creator who wanted to put that out there, and it's a missed block. If Elijah Mitchell runs the zone it's a counter to the left side, if he just keeps his feet, it's a touchdown. If McGlinchey makes this block, if you watch the play, the guy that's next to the man who makes the tackle is right there as well, and he's going to be unblocked. If McGlinchey makes his block, the man outside of his guy has a free run. He's going to get there too. You know why he's going to get there? Because Mitchell slipped. Turn on your game tape. Watch it. Look at the play that's been shown from the TV copy. You can see it. Now, am I saying that? Am I defending McGlinchey? Sure. Yeah, that's how you want to put it. Fine. But I felt like this is the guy who, it's one thing we know. And here's the thing, real quick, Micah. I'm not telling you that those pass snaps, those bad pass plays don't happen. I'm not telling you that those bad run plays don't happen. What I'm saying is we know that he's going to have some of those issues. So why are we ripping him on a weekly basis, even when the team's successful in winning? I don't get it. The 49ers didn't lose the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl in 2019 because Mike McGlinchey struggled. It was the guards. They gave up some pat downs and those kind of things. We didn't see McGlinchey last year because he was injured. The other thing with this McGlinchey stuff, real quick, and I heard somebody tell me that McGlinchey's been disappointing. The fact that Mike McGlinchey's even playing this year is something that everybody should understand wasn't expected. Guys don't just come back from torn quad tendons and play tackle in the NFL. When that injury occurred, there was a number of folks who thought that was could be a career ender. Not only is he back, but he's playing at a level in which, again, take PFF grades for what they're worth. I'm not a big believer in them, but you know what? Since they fit my narrative, I'll go ahead and put it out there. Again, 21st out of 80 qualified tackles with his PFF grade. Take it for what it's worth. As far as the Trent Williams tipping plays, saw the pictures from Jesse over at Last Second Sports, put that over on his Twitter. Looks to me like there's some tipping going on, something that I'll have to take a little bit closer look at when I watch the film later on. Haven't watched the film yet, just only seen the game live and a little bit of here and there of the game of the TV copy. So we'll see how it works out. Again, Anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I'm going to log out for the night. Do me a favor, though, before you leave. As my good pal Raphael 5629ers always says, he's not in here right now. Maybe I lost him for tonight. But make sure before you leave, you hit that like button. You hit that subscribe button. If you could do those two things for me, I'd really appreciate it. Those help amplify the channel for other folks to catch the what we're talking about here, and I really appreciate you guys doing that for me. Also, if you have friends and family that are 49er fans that maybe don't watch the show, maybe aren't subscribed, but they have a YouTube, let them know and tell them to check it out. And yeah, I'm different. I'm an older guy, so I've been around the game for a long time. 48 years old, 49er fan going back to the early 80s. I don't have time for some of the arguments that we see. I like to try to give you guys the straight stuff. So guy plays well, I tell you the guy plays well. If the guy plays bad, I tell you the guy plays bad. I try to keep it really agile in terms of that kind of stuff. I try not to have too much, some of the abject negativity. Mentioned that already in terms of the McGlinchey thing. I don't get why we just continue talking about the same negative stuff. It drives me crazy, especially when you see a team go out and do what they did last night. So anyway, do me a favor before you head out. Hit like, hit subscribe, let your friends and family know. Check out the Jackhammer channel on YouTube. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.